Regularly scheduled council meeting for February 3rd, 2020. Bringing in the flag tonight is Mid-Peninsula Boys and Girls Club. Please rise. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could I ask you to use the microphone and address the council? And the cameras will pick you up, and people at home will get to see your faces.
Wow.
So, hello everybody, my name is Karen Chan. I'm with the Mid-Peninsula Boys and Girls Club. I direct the College and Career Success Program. I'm here to introduce Scarlett. She is our designated Youth of the Year. She is our ambassador and representative of the Mid-Peninsula Boys and Girls Club. She was nominated from all of our members. We have about hundreds of members between our 5 clubhouses in San Mateo County. She was nominated and went through a process where she had to do a speech and an interview and submit essays as well to be selected. To recognize her for her time and contributions at the club. She's been with us for 6 years, and she's also been active in our leadership programs and also active in her school and in her community. So we wanted to recognize because she encompasses and really demonstrates our values as caring, responsible, and productive citizens.
Excellent. That's me. So while I was mayor, I had the privilege of going to your competition, and I just want to say it is intense. So you, Scarlett, are to be commended. I mean, I don't think I did stuff like that till I got to law school. So it was very, why don't you tell us a little bit about it? I think you're presented with a topic, and then you take it from there. What is it that you do with the topic?
So my topic was how I want to change the world, which is very broad, and it was difficult to come up with something, but I knew like inside my heart there was one thing that was like a big change in my life, which was like my mindset. And it was internalized depression and how I didn't want that to limit my potential. So I wanted to write about it, and that was my speech.
So you made it very personal as well. Well, I just want to say congratulations. I got the chance to be there for part of your presentations that night when I was doing my stint as mayor. So thank you for coming, and we do have a certificate to give to you as well.
Thank you.
Through the mayor.
Thank you, Director Chin and Scarlett Alvarez.
Through the mayor,
Rick?
I'd like to comment. I also have recently had a great tour of the Boys and Girls Club.
Oh, did you?
I'm really proud of the accomplishments that you are making. I saw so many young people there. I saw that your facilities are kind of stretched, but you're doing a lot with what you have. And I really congratulate you. Thank you for your service. And, you know, I met with Miguel there. Ask Miguel to call me because I've been looking for an opportunity to talk with him. So if you could let him know, Rick Bonilla, ask him to call me. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Madam Clerk, would you call roll?
With pleasure, Mayor. Councilmember Pappen.
Here.
Councilmember Lee.
Here.
Councilmember Bonilla.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Rodriguez.
Here.
Mayor Goethals.
Here. So we are all present, and moving on to the next item, I would like to acknowledge at this time that today is the first day of a new era. For the first time in over 20 years, we have a new full-time police chief. Chief Barberini, welcome. Thank you for coming. On time, everything? Thank you so much. Welcome on your first day. I'm sure that it was a full first day. And next, I would like to move on to our ceremonial item, item 1, which is Bob Palacio from the Park and Rec Community Services Manager.
Good evening, Mayor.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, council members. Bob Palacio, Community Services Manager for Parks and Recreation. So the item before you is a brief presentation from the Center for Age-Friendly Excellence. This past fall, the city of San Mateo was selected as one of 3 cities in Phase 2. We were approved and selected by the County Board of Supervisors. And so tonight we have Cynthia Nakayama and Roy Ernest from the Center of Age-Friendly Excellence to give a brief presentation to tell us more about the Age-Friendly Initiative.
Welcome.
Thank you, Bob. And as Bob mentioned, my name is Cynthia Nakayama, and I am one of the associate directors for the Center for Age-Friendly Excellence, along with Roy Ernest. We are also the co-project directors for the Age-Friendly Project of San Mateo County. We greatly appreciate having the opportunity to talk to all of you tonight, to briefly talk about what we do, also the Age-Friendly Initiative, and the process that we go through and are going to go through with San Mateo. So first of all, for CAFE, we have a mission of advancing transformational change as well as creating vibrant, healthy, inclusive communities for all. And this is based on the World Health Organization's global study with the intention to tap the potential that older people represent for humanity. Right now, there are 1,000 cities worldwide that are age-friendly. This is quite a growth since when CAFE first started with the Santa Clara County, there were 320 cities. So within 4 years, it's over tripled. So 1,000 and adding 3, which is Redwood City, Pacifica, and Daly City, who have all submitted their applications last year when we worked with them, and San Mateo, Foster City, and Colma are next. So we're excited about that. By 2050, at least 22% of the world's humans will be older adults. And this is significant because most will live in the cities, and this will significantly affect city planning. Getting back to WHO's global study, the results were that there are 8 main categories of age-friendly, where there are unmet needs for older adults. These categories are also in the brochure that you all have, and it's in the flower that you see on the right side of the page. And you probably recognize some of these, especially transportation and housing, because these have, in some cases, become beyond critical. But I think you would agree that all of these categories impact each other. For instance, transportation affects the seniors' ability to get out and go ahead with their daily activities, to socialize, and also attend medical appointments. So I just want to mention, before Roy gets into his talk about the process we go through, is that the city of San Mateo already has some momentum. For instance, there's a formal, active senior commission that was appointed by the city council, which is really great. Senior-specific transportation program, the Senior Get Around program, serving 168 participants right now. And this actually gets to the heart of senior isolation and also decreases increases independence. Of course, there's a multidimensional senior services program with different social activities, as well as the city's participation in the county's Get Healthy San Mateo, such as city planning for health toolkit. And San Mateo also has a community development department that works toward quality built environments, healthy neighborhoods, and strong economic base. So I will now turn this over to Roy.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you.
Welcome, Roy.
All right. Let's see. So the things that Cynthia just mentioned that's going on here in City of San Mateo, from our perspective, represents the strengths that you already have. So you're already an age-friendly city, whether or not who certifies you or not, you know. But the process that the county's going through is, first of all, the Board of Supervisors has taken a real leadership role. And particularly Dave Canepa, he's been a very strong advocate for this. And through his advocacy and the support of the Board of Supervisors, they've allocated some funds to help cities throughout San Mateo to become certified as age-friendly and to go through a more intentional process of determining how they're going to go about looking at various ways that their city can be a more livable community for everyone, including your older citizens. But so they have a countywide core team, which is comprised of the county employees at Department of Aging and Adult Services, a representative from Dave Canepa's office, Ann Keegren, and several other people, the president of the Commission on Aging. So that's the core team, along with myself and Cynthia and Annabelle Pelham, who's the founder of CAFE. And then that team meets every month, and then we talk about how things are going with the 3 cities that we're working with. And then the first step for each city is to organize a task force, and Bob Palacio and others have recommended some really wonderful people who all live here in the city of San Mateo that's going to be on what we're calling the age-friendly task force for the city of San Mateo. And so we're going to be, Cynthia and I are going to be meeting with them once a month, and we're going to lead them through a process that Annabelle has developed in her work with other counties, Santa Clara County, for example, and some communities up in Oregon where she spends a lot of time. And we're going to be getting together focus groups of local citizens here in San Mateo to meet with us to talk about the 8 domains. We're going to explain to them what each domain means and give them some examples, and then get feedback from them about how they would like to see San Mateo become more age-friendly. We're going to also get a focus group of service providers, senior service providers, both nonprofit and for-profit and public, who will also meet with us and through their experience in providing services to seniors in San Mateo, they're going to, I'm sure, come up with a list of suggestions. Then we're going to look at data that the county has put together, as well as the city of San Mateo has put together. We're going to basically look at what has been developed so far so that we don't forget to consider that. And then out of all that, we're going to kind of boil it all down and be able to come up with a variety of needs that the task force would then review and choose some projects to get started with as a task force, as a age-friendly effort. And those projects could be as concrete as putting a couple more park benches in local parks, or extending the crossing time at a busy intersection here in San Mateo where a lot of older adults cross the street. Or it could be as esoteric as starting a senior nature lovers group. or developing an intergenerational community garden project, or it could be a lot of different things that the task force would look at and in consultation with the city council and Bob and the folks that he works with in the recreation department. They'll come up with three ideas, 3 projects that are doable within 1 year. Okay. Then once that's done, Cynthia and I will work with a couple of people in the task force to write an application to the World Health Organization for the certification of City of San Mateo as an age-friendly city. And then the mayor signs the application. We send it to World Health Organization. So that's the process that we're going to go through. The commitment on the part of the City of San Mateo is the planning will be the first year or 2. Then the second step would be implementing the ideas that, again, one other thing I wanted to mention is that age-friendly projects don't have to cost a lot of money. They can be very inexpensive. They can be very practical, things that just basically involve the community, help supplement what the city's already doing, and do some really good stuff. And then we'll be, you'll evaluate how you've done, and then you'll continue along. Most cities that have started age-friendly initiatives have see it as just part of how they do business after a few years, basically. And then once you become a member of the global network of the World Health Organization, as well as what ARP is doing here in the United States, your city will be connected to a large network of other cities that are doing age-friendly stuff. Okay. So what are the benefits for an age-friendly effort? One is economic benefits. It just makes the city more desirable for people to live in. It increases social capital, which means social networks, supportive social networks that help people live and thrive. They sometimes result in some infrastructure innovations, like more benches in parks. And then it also just encourages people to live a more healthy lifestyle and it supports them in living a healthy life. So what we've experienced so far from talking with all the people that are going to be in the task force is your city has some great people that really have a strong commitment to support older adults in their community, and both Cynthia and I are really looking forward to working with everyone on the commission. And then, and just in case you wanted a definition of what an age-friendly is, according to the World Health Organization, it's an inclusive and accessible. An age-friendly city is an inclusive and accessible urban environment that promotes good aging. That's basically it. And that's the end of my presentation. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Roy.
All right.
I just want to take this moment to say, first of all, when I gave the State of the City, I got several questions about, are we an age-friendly community? It was something that came up in our council priorities. We talked about being an age-friendly city is one of our main priorities, and we want to keep that going forward. So Bob, Cynthia, and Roy, I want to thank you so much for the presentation tonight and for your commitment to be our partner as we go into this process and try to become an even friendlier, age-friendly community. Obviously, we're trying not to call it a silver tsunami. We're just trying to say we are an aging population, and to the extent that we can support those vibrant lifestyles for everyone, we want to do it. Mobility, walkability, livability, all of those things are something that we are supportive of. So thank you so much for being our partners.
You're welcome. Thank you.
One more acknowledgement before we move on to the consent calendar, and that is we absolutely love our relationship with Toyonaka Japan, and so we want to acknowledge Shingo. Thank you so much for being here, please.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council member and everybody. I'm Shingo, Sister City, Toyonaka City office staff. This time I came to learn citizen response in San Mateo City office. I think San Mateo is a great place, my favorite place, because there is under the blue sky, safety, and citizen very kindness. I hope friendship between Toyonaka City and City of San Mateo will continue. Thank you.
We are very proud of the kindness and friendship of Toyonaka Japan as well.
Yeah,
And
same.
for many years to come. Thank you so much, Shingo.
All right, thank you very much.
At this time, I'll ask the clerk to read the consent calendar.
With pleasure, Mayor. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered by the council to be routine and will be enacted by one motion without discussion. If discussion is desired, that item may be removed and considered separately. Item number 2, City Council meeting minutes approval. Item number 3, private sewer lateral update and ordinance adoption. Item number 4, City of San Mateo Annual Investment Policy 2020 approval. Item number 5, Basins 2 and 3 Collection System Improvement Project Right of Entry Permit Agreement. Item number 6, Marina Lagoon Vegetation and Water Quality Management Professional Services Agreement. And item number 7, the San Mateo Consolidated Fire Fee Collection Disclosure.
That's our consent calendar. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes unanimously. Now is the time for public comment. Is there anyone who would like to comment on something that is not on the regularly scheduled agenda? Public comment is limited to 15 minutes. Each person's comment should be limited to less than 3 minutes. Alex Melendrez.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Or Robert, whichever. No, I'm just kidding.
Alex is just fine. Hello, San Mateo City Council. I'm speaking on my own behalf tonight. As a lifelong resident of the city of San Bruno, I just want to, again, and congratulate your incoming police chief for his new job
You
here in
can't
the
have
city
him
of San
back.
Mateo. What was that?
You can't have him back.
You beat me to my next part. I was like, can we negotiate, like, get him back here? I think he's done an amazing job for the city that I call home. He's provided, great service to a city that has seen some real emergencies in my time, and I just think the city is very lucky to have him. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Alex. Appreciate it. Very kind words. With that, we'll move on to old business. Madam Clerk, would you read item number 8? Do we have a presentation? I see Sandy Council coming forward. Thank you, Sandy. Sandy, is this the fewest people who have ever come out for one of your items?
What to do? Okay, I'm Sandy Council, Housing Manager. With me is Darren Smith from Economic and Planning Systems, who is our economic consultant, and we are going to present to you the staff recommendations for revisions to the city's below market rate inclusionary housing program. First of all, we have an existing program. I'll go over that just as a starting point. Our inclusionary housing program was established in 1992, and then it was revised again in 2010. Currently, it applies to residential projects with 11 or more units. And the provisions of the program currently are that the developer has an option to either provide 10% affordable units or 15% based on various income levels. For example, for a for sale project, the developer has a choice of providing 10% units at 70% of the area median income, that's AMI, or 15% at 100% AMI. And for rental, they have the option of 10% of the units affordable to 50% of AMI, or 15% of the units at 60% AMI.
Sandy, if I could just get you to, let's define what BMR is and AMI.
Okay, so AMI is area median income, and I will use that term a few
throughout,
times.
and BMR is?
And BMR is our below market rate program, and I will use that term a lot.
Could you please explain how many dollars the AMI is? For people don't know that. So
That will be our next slide.
Okay, good.
Hang on.
Thanks.
Our program requires the developers to provide these affordable units within the market rate project that they're building. We have in lieu fees that are established for fractional units. Currently, ever since we had the option of 10 or 15%, which happened in 2010, all developers have chosen the 10% option. No one has chosen the 15%. And one of the reasons for that is they've also been able to take advantage of density bonuses that the state of California provides, and that makes their return more feasible economically. Darren will go into more of those details later. Increasingly, more and more developers have been using the state density bonus, and we've even had a few developers provide a little more affordability than the city requires in order for them to get more density for their projects. So, as to Rick's point about what are we talking about when we're talking about AMI, this chart is the assumptions that we used for the study. There are categories of income which are commonly known as very low income, moderate income. And simply stated, low income generally refers to people between 50 and 80% of the median, and moderate is the whole range of households from 80 to 120% of the median. And what this chart shows is, I just wanted to show you, like for low income, if you see there's actually 3 categories. So low income captures households everywhere from 50% to 80% of the median income. And as far as what's affordable for that group, it can be defined a number of ways, and different programs actually use different ways to define that. So low income, you could establish the rents to be based on 60% of the median, 70%, 80%. And so what we've done here is calculated about every permutation you could think of. So as we go forward in our conversations, this could be something we would reflect back on. Moderate income is especially a large range of household types, anywhere from 80 to 120% of the median. And you could establish pricing on any permutation, 80% or 90, 100, 110, 120. Different programs use different methodologies. The one thing that we have found from our experience, if you look over in the rental column, the 2-bedroom unit, median, that's the median of the county. For a household who makes $123,000, the affordable rent could be $2,800 or $2,900. That's pretty darn close to market for the older housing stock in San Mateo. And so staff cautions about having rents in our program very much over that, if at all. From our past experience, those units have been a little harder to fill. We have some in our portfolio. We have made it work, but they're harder to fill. And now incomes have increased quite a bit over the last couple of years, so these affordable rents are higher than what we're used to seeing. Conversely, staff has had challenges with very low income ownership units. So for example, on this chart, a household who at 50% of the median income who makes $61,000, even selling them a unit at $186,000, they still have to come up with closing costs and down payment, and we find that that is a challenge for people in that group. So as we move forward, you'll see our staff recommendations tried to avoid the very low income ownership and the moderate rentals just for those sort of affordability issues. We came to you in July at a study session to start to present this information to you. After that, we went back with your feedback. We had a roundtable conversation that some housing advocates and developers came to so we could vet our assumptions. Darren's economic model, we wanted to make sure we were making the right market assumptions. We wanted to talk to them about incentives and flexibility. And then since then, just this last week, we've had a few developers call, mostly just for clarification of what we were proposing. And then we just today got a letter from the BIA, which I think you all got also, that had some of their recommendations. And I'll get back to that at the end, but now I'm going to turn it over to Darren to talk through the study.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you. Before we flip the page here, again, I'm Darren Smith with Economic and Planning Systems, your consultant. I did want to just linger on this for a moment. Sandy mentioned the market rate rents for some of your older housing stock, but at the bottom of this table shows what most new construction in the city is able to achieve. And in part, that's because it's new and nicer, and in part, it's because it's what's necessary for the feasibility of the project. So a new two-bedroom unit, rental unit in San Mateo is getting about $4,600 a month, which is a good bit higher than kind of the overall average. And likewise, the maximum sales prices for a relatively small two-bedroom condo unit in the city is close to $900,000. And again, that greatly exceeds what a median income, let alone lower income household could afford. And those numbers are significant because they factor into the feasibility analysis that I'll be presenting momentarily. So the questions that we were asked to address include, are your requirements, your BMI requirements, consistent with your neighboring jurisdictions? Are they creating major feasibility issues for new construction? Can they be better balanced? Right now, again, you have those two options, the 10% versus the 15, and everyone has chosen the 10, so how do we make those a little bit more even? Can they be increased? The council has expressed an interest, again, primarily because everyone has chosen to do 10% affordable units. You'd like more. And so we've looked at a way to get to at least 15%. And is it possible that different standards could be introduced for different housing types? And I had mentioned to you last summer that Mountain View had then recently adopted a separate standard for townhomes than they had for other kinds of construction. So we've looked at that from a feasibility standpoint as well. First question then is the neighboring jurisdictions. This chart shows the for sale BMR requirements in San Mateo and a lot of your neighboring cities. And again, you have different standards for sale versus rental. On the left-hand side are your two choices, 10% low income or 15% moderate. You see that going across, pretty much everybody is doing at least 15%, with the exception of Sunnyvale. And a couple of cities are even doing 20%. And in many cases, the standard is to do moderate income, and in some cases, the standard is to have a mix of incomes within that 15% standard. So that's just, again, setting the tone for what else is happening around you. On the rental side, again, you've got your 10% very low or 15% low. Again, the standard among these other jurisdictions is typically 15% or even as high as 20% once again. And again, there is often a mix of incomes within that, some combination of very low and low income units required. So as Sandy mentioned, we did consult with developers. We had a forum in October and invited them to come and opine on our cost assumptions as well as our value assumptions for 4 different prototypes of housing that we can foresee happening here in San Mateo. We looked at 2 different rental prototypes, both 5-story apartments, one with podium parking, that is the parking is underneath the building, and another with the units are wrapped around a vertical parking structure. And then on the for sale side, we looked at condos, again, 5 stories with podium parking. And we looked at townhomes because we know that there is increasing interest in San Mateo and all up and down the peninsula, frankly, in producing townhome development. And we made certain assumptions about the density, the base density that was achievable for each of these. And what we found with our own numbers and those that we vetted with the developers, housing, despite being very valuable, is also very costly to construct. And the cost side of the equation has been extremely dynamic in the last few years. And so each of these different prototypes faces some kind of feasibility challenge that can vary significantly from site to site and place to place. But they are, you might think that if you're selling $1 million homes, you're making a lot of money, but the construction costs are extremely high as well. And so we looked at that from a market perspective, as well as the feasibility of what your BMR requirements can do to the overall project. And we incorporated the state density bonus, which again can provide up to 35% more units than you would otherwise get with your base zoning. Now, for most of the city, your maximum density is 50 units to the acre. So if you maximize the state density bonus at 35%, you can get up to 68 units per acre. So this table, or figure rather, shows the estimate of the development costs versus the market value of different types of units. The blue bars are what we think these things cost to build on a per square foot basis, including the cost of land, which we've estimated to be about $10 million an acre here in San Mateo. So that adds a couple $100,000 per unit to the construction costs, just the fact of buying the land. And as you see here, the market values exceed the development costs for both apartment prototypes and for townhomes. But as of right now, the condos are kind of struggling. They're again very valuable, but they're also very costly to construct. And we see that there's a feasibility challenge even for market rate condominiums, let alone when you start to layer in the BMR requirements with those. In this table, we try to convey what the weighted average value of your two different requirements are. Again, your 10% requirement versus your 15% requirement. And so, for example, on the far left, you've got your 5-story apartments. And if you're doing 10% very low income units, we see that the combination of the market rate units that you get plus the BMR units that you're doing puts the weighted average value at a little over $800,000 per unit. And if you're doing the 15% requirement, the weighted average is a little under $800,000 per unit. And you see that same dynamic with each of the prototypes, and what it's really meant to convey is in each of these cases, the prudent developer would choose to do the 10% option because they get more value for it, which is exactly why every development that has come to the city in the last decade has chosen to do the 10% option. And so again, we've looked at the potential to increase the requirement. When we were here last summer, you strongly expressed as a body the interest in achieving at least 15% inclusionary. There was interest among you to achieve a mix of incomes rather than a single income category. Some of you hope to incorporate extremely low income units that is at 30% of AMI or below, which I'll remind you means folks making about $37,000 a year if they're in that extremely low income category. There was some interest in looking at potentially higher requirements for townhomes, as Mountain View had then recently done. And so we've looked at a variety of different options. There are literally, I think, infinite number of options that we could look at for how to get 15%. Are we doing 10% at this income and 5% at that? Are we doing all 15 at this, and so forth? And I'll go into those in a moment, but the big picture is when we vetted all these numbers, we did not see a strong rationale for having different requirements for one physical type of building versus another. The economics of development were comparable enough that we did not see a strong logic and rationale for requiring, in particular, townhomes to have a higher requirement than a more typical multifamily project would. On this figure, we show, in this case, 8 different options that we've looked at for 5-story apartments. And what we see on the left, the blue and orange bars, are the 2 requirements that you currently have. And again, we're going with the weighted average value per unit as our metric. You know, what is the value of this overall project given the mix of affordable units and market rate units that you would be required to do. So you see on the left, you have your 10% requirement at 50% of AMI, and again, the weighted average of that one comes out a little over $800,000. The 15% requirement at 60% of AMI comes in a little bit below. And the 2 bars that I've put black outlines on, those represent the staff recommendation, which we'll get to in more detail coming up. But essentially, those next 6 represent variations on the theme. How can we get 15% or even 20% affordability that achieves somewhat similarly in terms of the overall value of the project? So we looked at 15% of the units at 70% of income, or of area median income. We looked at 15% comprised of 11 at 50 and 4 at 70, and so on. And the deeper the level of affordability that you want, on the one hand, so say the green bar, 4th from the right, if you wanted to get extremely low income units in that project, you would need to balance those with some units at, say, 110% of area median income, which, as Sandy mentioned, can be a little tricky to implement and operationalize. But that's, again, one of these gives and takes that we've looked at. So there's a variety of ways that you can get to a 15% requirement, but we've looked at that whole variety, and again, incorporating the density bonus factor of value in there, come to the determination that the program that is most similar to your current requirement and responds to the true need for below market rate rentals in your community would be similar to what you've got now, which is the one option that you have now, the 15% requirement at around 70% of AMI. We did similar comparisons for the condos and the townhomes, and again, looked at a whole variety of options here, and we can speak to each of them individually when you have questions, and we can even look kind of impromptu at alternatives if you'd care to. But the gist of this one on the condo side, again, I already noted that those have feasibility challenges all by themselves. So the staff's recommendation this evening is to stay with your current 15% requirement at 100% of AMI rather than making a significant adjustment to that one. And on the townhome side, again, the economics of construction for these were similar enough that, again, the recommendation is going to be to stay with the 15% requirement at 100% of AMI.
Okay. So with that in mind, when staff looked at trying to come up with a recommendation, these are some of the things that we tried to pull together. We wanted to address the council's desire to increase the number of units. In doing that, we realized that it will be an increase in cost to the developers. And this 15% option, which I'll go into in just a second, is very similar to other jurisdictions. Some cases it's even below. And we feel like there is a way to encourage mix of incomes, especially in the rental project, which I will show on the next slide. So the staff recommendation is just to eliminate the 10% option that we have now and stay with the 15%. So for rental projects, we believe with the state density bonus, developers will still choose to use the 11%, 60% AMI option to maximize their density bonus, and then that will leave 4% that they could charge the higher rent. So we would get a blend of incomes just by their own economic motivations. It would also give them the flexibility, depending on the site, to go ahead and do just a straight 15% at 70. Maybe we should go back to the chart. So we feel like if we just make the standard 15% and then developers have the flexibility and the options to do more affordable or a mix of affordability as would suit their project, especially when they're trying to use density bonus. And then similar concept with the for sale units. With townhouses, they're not going to be doing they're not going to be eligible for a density bonus, so they would just straight give us the 15%. But if condominiums ever did become economically feasible in another market, then they may try to use density bonus and give us some lower affordability as well as the higher affordability. So if we go back to our little chart, back one more. Oops, oh, I'm going the wrong way. Let's go to the rental. Okay, so the rental here, we're looking at, as Darren said, the gray bar and the yellow bar. So 15% at 70 as the standard. We think some people may come in 15 at 70. Other people will take advantage of density bonus and give us 11% at 50 and 4% at 70. So we'll get a variety of incomes. One of the things as a result of the developer roundtable, when we were asking developers about incentives and flexibility, the state density bonus was indeed the thing that was the most value to developers. So the way we have this structured, we think it's both simple and it's a way for them to use the density bonuses that they desire. We have some flexibility already designed into our program, which we didn't recommend changing at this time. And then there were some alternatives that were of interest to the developers, but at this point in time with Measure P, that we can't implement those at this time, but maybe in the future we can start to look at off-site options, acquisition and rehab options, in lieu fees. All of those other options can be looked at later. We figured that this at least would be something we can do now without further study. Also with the general plan, there may be other options we would want to look at. Like I mentioned, the BIA sent a letter today. All of their recommendations, I think, are accommodated in either our recommendations today or already in the program. The only real suggestion from the developers that we didn't take was a suggestion to increase the new requirements like 1% a year instead of doing 5% right now. So that was really the only thing that we didn't move forward with from that process. Our recommendation is to make this immediate as of adopting the resolution. However, we would grandfather everyone who has submitted a planning application, pre-application, as long as they've submitted it, whether it's complete or not, we would grandfather them in. And according to our planning staff...
They may choose to do it voluntarily, though.
Yes, they may.
Okay.
Yes. We have, as far as I know from our planning staff, we have like 3 projects that are in that process right now where they've submitted a application, but they're not complete yet. And then the other thing we did was update our fractional fee based on this new analysis that Darren did. So those are our recommendations, and ask for questions.
Thank you very much, Sandy. Any questions before we go to public comment? Yes.
When you were doing your economic model, was it like kind of forecasting how many units we might get under each scenario, or is there just too many variables to be able to determine that?
We did not estimate that in terms of how many units would get produced. To do that, you would kind of need to know the value of every potentially developable site in your city and figure out, at what threshold they each pass that. So that was not part of the
You're
analysis.
an economist, can't you make some assumptions?
I make lots of assumptions.
I guess the question I'm getting at then maybe, and if you don't even care to guess, but under this, I'm trying to figure out a site. It sounds like this recommendation is going to get us a more variety of units, which is one of our goals. But I'm just curious, and I'm a little bit concerned that we're going to get a lot fewer units just because of the incentives. And I was just curious if you have any thoughts on that. Are we kind of killing 20% of our units at the cost of looking like we're trying to do more by increasing it and also getting the variety?
I don't have a speculation about 20% fewer units, but it is clearly true that if you eliminate the 10% option, which everyone has been using, and leave only the 15% option, and that's basically what the staff recommendation is, you are effectively increasing the cost of this requirement compared to current conditions. So some projects will be able to absorb that easily, and others may have a problem, particularly where there is something that already exists on the site, right? Where it's an office building that's worth X dollars, and you used to be able to make that and then some with the 10% requirement, and now you come up a little short. So it's possible that some sites that would otherwise develop with this new requirement might not. But I don't have a strong indication of how many such sites there would be. There's more than this factor that would determine that, including cost escalation and value escalation on the market rate side and all of that.
And just how you described it, it sounds like it's more than possible. It's likely that that's probably going to happen at least once in the next 5 years, I would. Or is that just too much of a guess to even?
I would not be at all surprised if some projects that were feasible with the 10% option would have trouble meeting the 15% without making other adjustments in their program.
Great, thank you.
Rick, you want to go next?
Yeah, I have questions. I'm curious because I see the recommendation, and yet I watched the report, and you talked about the ever-increasing, and in fact, what I think now is actually, according to some people, the highest cost of construction in the world, right here, right? And in fact, some people, some figures who are involved directly, such as the executive director of Silicon Valley at Home, says that right now construction is slowing at a time, and this was in August 2019, slowing at a time when we need housing now more than ever, and we need to figure out ways to help developers move forward and deal with these challenges. And she thinks that through some streamlining and ways that cities themselves can help reduce costs. So talking about reducing costs, Spur, I'm a member of Spur, also wrote a similar article saying costs are increasing and we need to find ways to help developers if we expect to see more construction. So I'm wondering, why do we look at in our own estimates, your own research, increasing in very high cost of building, and yet still recommend making it harder for developers to build? And I'm not just, I'm singing a tune that most people aren't used to hearing me sing. But, and the BIA has actually never been my friend, still not. But I find the information they provided very interesting. And if people have been paying attention, I have steadily said, no, we should not increase the rate of BMR because it causes developers to think twice. It's going to cost them more to build, and we want to get more building. So raising the cost of building is not what we should be doing right now, and that's just my opinion, because I want to see us get, now beyond that, I like what we're doing with our opportunity sites. We're building all affordable there. I think we need to spend more time and effort looking for more pieces of land and more partners where we can work out deals, where we can build big numbers of affordable housing, because that's really what we need, right? And there are people that say, well, you need market rate housing too. We do, but we have a program, I think, that allows for that with certain numbers of BMRs. We already have a couple of projects kind of floundering on the books. The Hillsdale Terrace project has gone nowhere in over 3 years, and I hear that Essex is backed out of their Fifth Avenue San Mateo Drive project. So I'm concerned with the recommendation here. My thoughts would be we should leave it the way it is for now. Stability is what developers are looking for. They're always looking for stable, situations. I think we should leave it the way it is for now. Consider it later. Thanks.
Councilmember Lee?
Yep. So just to reiterate, the process that you came about, this recommendation did include an economic analysis, feasibility analysis for developers, which includes their profitability. And they were at the table in the process to confirm the feasibility of the increase.
We vetted the numbers with them. We shared our pro forma assumptions and so forth. That is true.
Okay. And the letter that we got from, BIA, it looks like by and large we incorporated almost every single one of their suggestions. I agree with you that I agree with you, Rick, that there are probably ways that we can help reduce costs by streamlining our own internal processes. And I thought the suggestion about some by right code is an opportune suggestion that I think is worth considering, that can lower the cost of construction and also streamline it. I feel very confident that the due diligence was there, that the increase is justified, and I would like to see us move forward with it.
I want to see if Councilmember Pappen has any questions before we go to public comment.
I just would like to put back up, sorry. I would like to put back up while we're going through this discussion, because you, Rick, were talking about sort of changes in how many units you would get. If we could just sort of keep these slides and toggle between them in front of us so we're kind of see what we're dealing with here. On
Slide 10 was the one I was most interested in. When you're done.
You like this one? Which one do you like?
We were just looking at it right there, slide 10.
Slide 10, okay. Yeah, sorry. And I don't really have any questions at this time. I think I followed it.
I have one more question. Can you talk a little bit more about the flexibility in terms of these two options? It allows the developer to choose their own combination. Is that right? And so that is the most flexible option that typically developers prefer. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Based on our past experience, we believe people would choose the yellow bar, 11% and 4.
Which is one of the options that you're recommending.
Yeah, so if our option is just blanket 15%, they can do the yellow bar, which we believe most will. If they don't want to, they could do 15% at one market, at one level. Perhaps if they had a site that had certain constraints, they couldn't get the maximum density, maybe they would go with a lower density and they would choose that one.
And just so that I understand, the yellow bar is more units than the gray bar? Because in the yellow bar, they get the density bonus.
No, it's value.
Oh, it's more market rate units, yes. The yellow bar is more market
More
rate
units overall.
Yes.
So there is flexibility, and this accounts for the developer making more money with more units, and we get the same number of BMR units.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I understood that before I go to public comment. Adam Lorraine.
Good evening, council and staff. My name indeed is Adam Lorraine. I am a 20-plus year resident of San Mateo, and I wanted to make a public comment in support of the staff's recommendations tonight. It seems to me that after having done some thoughtful, comprehensive analysis, staff's recommendation appears to be sensible, balanced, and modest. It will lead, I believe, my interpretation of staff's recommendation is that it would likely lead to some more affordable housing in future developments in our city. without necessarily deterring developers from building or too many projects from penciling out. And it provides developers the flexibility in options, income levels, et cetera, that they seem to note in the roundtable. It won't be enough to bridge the whole affordable housing gap, of course, but this is one tool in a larger tool belt. And indeed, this council debated one other such tool just a bit earlier today, and there were mentions of the general plan update and other future opportunities to look into other ways. And I feel that every bit helps and is important. So I just wanted to thank the council and the staff for considering this tonight.
Thank you, Adam. We need an Adam-sized microphone, don't we?
Raise it up. Any more?
If there's no other public
There he
comment,
is.
there's one more public comment. Alex Melendrez, come on down.
I don't think an Adam-sized mic. Just throwing that out there. Hello, Honorable San Mateo City Council and city staff. My name is Alex Melendrez, and again, I'm representing the Housing Leadership Council of San Mateo County. To steal something that Councilmember Rick Bonilla said, you're going to hear a slightly different tune out of me tonight. Our position in this case is kind of like a no position kind of aspect, and it really ties into the fact that the problem with the ordinance in San Mateo is really tied to that. It's like it said in the staff report, a lot of the incentives that would be the best, that would provide the best option for inclusionary and affordable housing are really hampered under Measure P, and Measure P makes a lot of those flexibility options impossible. We are supportive of options that provide more affordable housing at the deepest levels of affordability. However, one of those aspects, for example, in land dedication, is it impossible, or at the very least very difficult to do under what even the improvements are provided. It's hard to see a developer donating a piece of land so that you could have a mixed proposal where you have a market rate developer and an affordable housing developer on the same site. If you had a market rate developer providing 10 units of 10 affordable units, it's going to be closer to the market range. Whereas if you get those just 1-for-1 ratio, 10 affordable units built by an affordable housing developer where the land was donated, you're going to get a deeper level of affordability in that aspect. And I'm kind of mixing my words here, I'm sorry. But we want to highlight that large, meaningful changes for BMRs can't truly happen until Measure P is defeated. Then we can create a truly inclusive, affordable housing policy. Apologize for my mix-ups of words there. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. If there's no other public comment, I will close the public comment period, bring it back to the council. And I would note before we get into our comments, part of the reason this is before us tonight is because there were some crazy council members who were pushing for 20% and even higher last year, and they
became mayor?
Yeah. And so if we were looking at a 20% option before us tonight, that would not be the recommendation that you would be making. And in fairness, you have kindly left it off so that you don't have to say that it's a terrible idea, and I appreciate that. You did a lot of analysis on what the best numbers are, and from what I can see, that yellow bar is what's going to end up happening. Just like the 10% happens every time, that yellow bar gives them the density bonus. You can see all of it funneling towards that. Sorry, I should speak last. Sorry about that. Diane, you have comments?
I hear let me make sure I understand this again. This is the chart we're looking at. It is the average value per unit. So when it's a lower bar, it means there will be less units, though.
That is one potential outcome, yes.
Because you won't be
All else
making as
being
much
equal.
money?
Right. So what this contrasts is, again, on the far left, the blue bar is the average value of what you currently offer at 10%. The orange is your alternative that no one takes. So we tried to match it to somewhere between those two.
So you'd make over 800,000, what, let's call that 815,000 maybe, over on the left?
Okay.
You took big leaps, so I'm trying to like estimate where that is. So if we're looking at the gray and the yellow, it's slightly, let's say it's about 790 for the yellow. I'll go 785 for the gray. What do you think? Humor me.
790 and 793.
Close. There we go. Okay. So my feeling is this. I don't see that as a huge deduction from what developers can make, and I like this for two reasons. One, I like the flexibility, and two, I like the fact that we might be getting close towards maybe a teacher's salary, that missing middle that we were not seeing before. We're seeing a lot of very low income, not extremely, very low income. So I know that's out in the market, but even with our former redevelopment sites, we were trying to get a little bit higher on the AMI spectrum. So for me, I'm supportive of this for those two reasons. One, I don't think you're going to make a whole lot less more money. Three reasons. No, not a whole lot less more money. There is the flexibility, and we're reaching a slightly different AMI percentage that we hadn't reached before. So that's where I am.
Supportive of the
Supportive,
recommendation.
yes, sir.
Got it. Who wants to go next? Councilmember Lee?
I'm also supportive of it, and I echo what Diane said as well. I think that reaching the 70% is a market that we have not yet tapped and built any affordability stock or affordable housing stock. So there's a huge deficit there, and a huge opportunity. I trust the analysis that has been done, and any marginal risk at deterring potential developers, I think, is strongly outweighed by the benefits to the community and the increased number of units that can come online, and those units that are going to be serving our missing middle that we've been striving to reach. So for me, it's a very clear choice. And I will say that I also think it does beg the conversation down the road about what we can do internally to streamline processes and to promote partnerships and more flexibility, and not and take away any deterrents that are within our sphere of control.
Thank you very much. Do you guys want me to go first?
You already did.
Go ahead.
So I support staff's recommendation. It's not as clear cut for me because I am very concerned what happens, especially in the case of a downturn. I know this is an extreme example, but I'm seeing what's going on in San Francisco right now, where they're just not building anything because they went too high. And I would like to have a commitment that we are going to revisit this maybe in 18 months or 2 years to kind of look, is it working? And maybe outreach to different developers to kind of see. I mean, if you ask a developer, which option do they want, they always want the cheaper option. But it would be really great to see if we can learn about projects that perhaps didn't happen because of this. And that is, I think that's the only responsible way to go, because if we get 0% of something, then that's not that good. So
that's a good idea.
Okay, thanks. Well, I still feel that, let me ask this. Is it going to cost a developer more to build units, let's say a 100-unit building of apartments in San Mateo with the recommended options than it would have before?
Strictly speaking, it won't cost them more to build it,
Yes.
which was your question.
Right, to build it, right.
Then no, the cost side of the equation will be the same. The value side is where it changes.
they get less.
Yeah, they get less revenue. Right, so, okay. So that's still a disincentive.
It is,
I think.
yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't want to drill a hole in the bottom of the boat here. I don't think it's really bad, but I'm not sure it's worth going through all the changes in what we have right now, which is for developers, a little bit of rough waters. I would prefer to keep it stable, but if everybody's intent on making this change, then I'll go along with them.
I make a motion to adopt the recommendation.
Second.
All those in favor? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Sorry.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Sandy, I don't know what it is, but just take it. Maybe you want to present the day after the Super Bowl every time, and we'll see how that works. But thank you very much.
And we'll see what happens. We'll definitely keep in touch with developers on it.
Definitely come back and bring us.
Yeah, I like the 2-year review.
In
Yeah.
18 months, bring it back to us and tell us how we did. Thanks so much. We don't use that word in here, ma'am. We're moving on to the next item, which is our citywide special events task force creation. We have a presentation from Jennifer Chen, our economic development manager, who spends part of her time keeping the mayor in line. Yes.
And it's a greater percentage than the last, no.
So stipulated. So stipulated.
Good evening, City Council members. I am Jennifer Chen, the Economic Development Manager for the city. The item in front of you tonight is a creation of a citywide special task force. We are asking you to approve the creation of the task force, the proposed composition of the task force members, the process of appointing members, and the appointment of 2 city council members to serve on the task force. So last year at the November 4th study session on special events, council requested staff propose the formation of a special events task force. The purpose of the task force would be the following: to analyze the community special events for process, review, and approval of these events, identify possible additional events to consider that meet the needs and the interests of the city's population in terms of cultural diversity and age groups served, and finally, consider the location of the events within the city for geographic diversity. The following are the proposed composition of task force members: 2 city council members, 1 representative from the Senior Citizens Commission, 1 representative from the Youth Activities Council, 1 representative from the Parks and Rec Commission, 1 representative from the Downtown San Mateo Association, 1 representative from the San Mateo Chamber of Commerce, and finally 1 representative from the San Mateo United Homeowners Association. The commission itself this proposal would have all the members be subject to the Brown Act rule. If council supports the proposed composition of the citywide special events task force, staff recommends that council appoints its 2 members tonight and then allow the members to appoint the remaining members within the guidelines of the approved composition.
Great, that's it?
That's it.
Fantastic, wonderful. Thank you so much for that presentation. Any questions at this time? We will take public comment on this. Anything? No, nothing? Any public comment at this time? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period, bring it back to the council. Are there any volunteers? 2, we have 2 volunteers. It's,
I nominate Councilmember Lee, Councilmember Rodriguez.
Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? You've got your 2 members, and then at some future date, they will pick the remainder of the task force.
That's correct.
That was easy.
Go forward and make it fun.
That's the plan.
That's your edict.
That
fun.
That September nights on B Street, was that successful?
It'd be like in every picture and
Did we
every
make any
slide.
money?
Oh, man. Did we run out of beer? Thank you so much, Jennifer. I appreciate it very much. With that, we have no new items. We're going into closed session at this time. Before we go into closed session, no, this says we're going to do reports and announcements afterwards. Should we do reports and announcements now?
Yes.
if you'd like to. We are keeping the camera crew here for when you come back into closed session.
We will come back and we'll report out and we'll talk about that, but let's do reports and announcements now in case people want to go to bed. Yes, do you have reports and announcements, Councilmember Pappen?
Did I report on, I did report on, no, I don't have
What?
any.
What?
No, when we painted, but that was the last time.
Yes. Your painting was...
Went to the census, oh, yeah, I'll let you report, you were speaking, go ahead.
Anybody who read the newspaper this morning on page 2 saw that Councilmember Lee was at the census event, yes?
Prominently.
With former Mayor Pappen and Supervisor Pine. We had a great time. There was a great turnout at St. James AME Zion Church, and the purpose of the event was to discuss how the census is critical and really how we all have a responsibility to be counted and to do our part in engaging as many community members in the process as possible, and especially those who are hard to reach.
Fantastic. And that's a really important issue, so much so that we're going to have a presentation in the future from League of Women Voters and several other groups who are promoting this. It is so important. This is how we determine congressional seats. This is how we get federal funding. It is essential. April 1 is when we'll, yes, thank you for that. And since our last meeting, we had the Blue Sky event. We had our priorities session, so we are ready for the next year of priorities. Staff don't want us to come up with any more ideas. We have enough ideas. We are hosting Council of Cities in May, and the planning is already happening. It's going to be at Hillsdale. The theme is going to be the future of retail. It should be a very interesting presentation, and it's going to be at Hillsdale. And then, what else? There's more.
Future of retail and the death of Amazon? No. God, sorry. The book signing, which is so exciting, is coming up. So Linda Patterson, who started America for Americans so many years ago, and is the reason that we adopted the 101st Airborne. She is coming. She wrote a book about her experiences, about how she went out to visit her brother. Her brother was killed. She fell in love with one of the members of her brother's unit, and the rest is history. It's a true love story, talking about how her love for her brother turned into the passion for the rest of her life, and how she's done so much good, and how she's inspired cities like our own to also do good. So that will be incredible. She's coming on March 21. It'll be a fantastic event at the library. So we're looking forward to that. And one final note is the Progress Seminar. I think most of us, if not all of us, are going to the Progress Seminar. This year, SamCETA has decided that in an act of unity, they want to include everybody in their Friday night dinner. So whereas our tradition has been, and staff did a tremendous amount of work that I am eternally grateful for, we are going to go along with the program and have dinner with everyone else in our show of unity, and it'll be good. We're looking forward to it. It'll be in Santa Rosa this year for the first time. More reports and announcements? What do you got?
I have some exciting news out of the San Mateo Foster City School District. Trustee Watkins is going to be restarting the Education Foundation for the school district, and she is initiating a gala that's going to be on October 23rd. And this is really, they've taken a look at, why is that a bad date? They've taken a look at what's going on with the library and that successful foundation, and what's going on and what's happening with our Parks Foundation, and why not for our kids. So if you can save that date, they're really looking to make a splash for that first one. And we're trying to figure out where it's going to be, but it looks like one of the things that they're looking at is perhaps in one of the new gyms that we're building. So that could be kind of cool if that happens. But.
October 23rd.
October 23rd.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Anything
I
else?
have a
good
couple
in
of
the city?
things.
Yes, sir.
So on Thursday night, I was also at a census event at the Housing Department, County Housing Department office, where Carol Groom put it on with the Housing Department. Well attended, about 100 people. The whole county youth commission or committee, whatever it is, was there. And a lot of discussion about hard to reach populations and so forth. But I raised another concern that I've raised in other settings about the census, which is that there's a huge fear factor out there right now. Many immigrants feel fear just going to work, just taking their kids to school. These are people who literally might not want to be found to do the census, okay? So I recommend that we all reach out and make friends and do the best we can to find anybody that we possibly think may be, because our state loses $1,000 per person who is not counted. And this can add up to, huge amounts of money, not to mention the fact that we could lose a congressional representative. Okay, so, and that's already a serious consideration that's being looked at. Besides from that, at Peninsula Clean Energy, we're going to be breaking the ground at a new 100-watt facility in Kings County. The lights were turned on at our Wright Solar plant in Los Banos, so that's 200 megawatts of new energy. We're going to be spending $12 million, and the California Energy Commission is going to be spending another $12 million to put 3,600 charging stations throughout the county to eliminate that barrier. We're doing great things there. And at South Bayside Waste Management Authority, we have an electric garbage truck in trial right now. And it's suffering from a little range difficulty, but the technology there is always being improved. So anyway, things are looking up.
That's so awesome. That's so awesome. Thank you so much. The second item that you mentioned, I took as a challenge to the new Chief Barberini to reach out to all members of our community and make sure that they feel safe and included and that they feel comfortable coming out to be counted. Because
Right, and
everybody,
we have our San Mateo as a welcoming city proclamation that
everybody
we made.
needs to be counted.
Chief should, if he hasn't, he should look at that. And,
Excellent.
Yeah,
Good
thank
stuff.
you.
Okay, so now we're going to break into our closed session. We are not adjourning, and then we will come back out to report from our closed session. Excellent. So we are back in open session at this time in our regular meeting of February 3rd, 2020. At this time, I have two resolutions in front of me. I'm going to read the resolutions and then call for a vote. The first resolution is resolution number 15, setting compensation for the city attorney. Whereas on January 7th, 2020, the city council considered the performance of the city attorney, and whereas the performance of the city attorney meets or exceeds all expectations, and whereas San Mateo City Charter Section 4.02 provides that salaries shall be fixed by resolution. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of San Mateo, California hereby resolves that the monthly salary for the city attorney is established to be $20,140.62, which reflects a 3% raise. The effective date for this monthly salary of the city attorney established in item 1 above shall be upon the beginning of the next pay period following the adoption of this resolution. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes unanimously, and I have signed it. Now, resolution number 16, setting compensation for the city manager. Whereas on January 7th, 2020, the city council considered the performance of the city manager, and whereas the performance of the city manager meets or exceeds all expectations, whereas San Mateo City Charter Section 4.02 provides that salaries shall be fixed by resolution. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of San Mateo, California hereby resolves that the monthly salary for the city manager is established to be $22,745.49, which reflects a 3% raise, 3% increase. The effective date for the monthly salary of the city manager established in item 1 above shall be upon the beginning of the next pay period following the adoption of this resolution. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? To both of you, thank you so much for all the work that you do. We truly appreciate it. Thank you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our former Mayor Pappen.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I just would like to close our meeting tonight in memory of a member of our community that we lost this week, a young mother, Michelle Reed, who has 2 children, Aiden and Emily, and she succumbed to cancer. Very sad case indeed. And she was just one of those people that was just, every time you saw her, she was a bright spark in your day. And the world is a little less bright without her. So if we may have a moment of silence in her memory. Thank you.
Thank you, and we are adjourned.